So today's session was really about how do you segment your market. So even the companies that have grown really, really big started out small. So they found a market that they could go, which was big enough for them to matter, small enough for them to dominate, and they could knock on to other markets out there. So today we train people on how to understand the process of segmentation, how to understand the customers and go in that. Also how to talk to customers. It's not about talking about your products, it's talking about their needs and how they solve their needs in the current period of time to establish that there's a real need. And obviously some new concepts on lean thinking, lean startup and minimum viable products. As an entrepreneur, you've got to have the discipline and focus on one market till it works for you or doesn't. If it doesn't work for you, move on to another one. But that's what normally is good practice, and that's been the underlying success story of most entrepreneurial companies of the hyper-growth side that have succeeded. Okay, so Facebook was a good idea, but started with a small market, and it didn't know how big it was going to go. Microsoft built BASIC for Altair, BASIC for other machines. So it did a BASIC compiler for one computer, then for other machines, then built other languages apart from BASIC. So built compilers for Pascal and Fortran, then went into operating systems, then went into applications, and then had its first big public offering. So can you see how the market was? BASIC for one computer, BASIC for several computers, BASIC as a language, let's do other languages, let's do software, let's do that. They never started by saying we're going to be a company that's going to do compilers and software for all computers and all languages in all countries at the same time. Started small. Another second bit of counterintuitive thing, yes, you must do a comparative analysis. But when you're starting up, you're so small and going for such a small market to start with that startups or entrepreneurs tend to overestimate competition. And the thinking around it is be aware of the competition, but unless you're a BT competing with a Virgin, competing with a Vodafone in a market that's saturated, competition doesn't matter that much. What matters a lot more is can you convert and bring new customers on. Yeah. And people want to know, again, you guys just go back to slides from session 3 and session 2, and all these diagrams are out there. People want to know that what you're implementing is in a market that is A, big, so that you have enough room to play, so that there are enough competitors, the competitors have room to play, and B, is possibly growing. You need a paying customer. Just because you have a paying customer, you may not have a good business. Why? Because you need to make profits, and you need to make profits on an ongoing basis, right? Any of us can sell a 10-pound note for 9 pounds many times over, right? That's a good proposition. That doesn't mean you're making money, right? And that's the whole thing of adjacent markets. You start and there's a market right next to it, and you go and dominate that. Then you turn around and say, I've done UK supermarkets, and then you have a choice. Then you can say, I'm going to go into restaurant supplies in UK, or I'm going to go to European supermarkets, right? So when you grow, you're always growing in adjacent steps. Why? Because then one segment becomes then you become a leader in a segment. So when you enter Germany and say, I'm a leader in the UK supermarket, we have 70% in UK supermarket, those stores are going to listen to you. But if you go to Germany and say, I got 3% share there, 2% in online, some project happening in India, it's going to be much harder for you. Which is why for people, for companies that grow huge, they basically focus in one market, dominate it, and going in. So segmentation, and you can read it and it'll be in the slide, segmentation is really a process of going and honing down, brainstorming, filtering down. It's going to be these people in this area, in this neighborhood. That's where we're going to start. And then what we know for sure is that we're going to go to the next adjacent segment, next adjacent segment, next adjacent segment. When you come to your market, what you need to demonstrate is that there's a need, They will prefer your offerings. They'll pay a price. The fact that you can demonstrate you've got 10 customers. Can you access them? Do you know who they are? Will they invite you? Whether they're willing to see you? And if you dominate this segment, can you move on to other segments? And that's back to the point of the gentleman here. You got an idea, you got a research idea on helping dementia with a diagnostic tool. Because you're from the industry, because you're with a medical background, when you go and talk to someone, there's credibility, they're willing to listen to you. If I came with the same idea, I wouldn't even know where to start because I don't have that background. So a good characteristic of your segment is one that you can actually access easily. Move the focus from yourself and your idea to the person and how they have done it in the past. So you were having a futuristic conversation of a hypothetical product that doesn't exist, but nobody was going to buy, from someone who loved you so much, so it's not going to disappoint you. And the conversation needs to shift from their use case. When they deal with that kind of problem, how do they do that? So it would typically be, you, Mom, when have you used the iPad the last time? For what? Did you use it in the kitchen? Have you ever bought an app? Which? Why? Well, I bought a solitaire app. I paid $2.99 for it. Do you use cookbooks? Is there anything you dislike them? Yes, I dislike cookbooks because I've got 25. I don't know which one to pick on. I don't know how to thumb them, right? When was the last time you bought a cookbook? I bought 3 of them last week. So if you know there's difficulty in using cookbooks and she bought 3 last week or 3 over the last year, that means there's a prospective customer. If she says, I've stopped buying cookbooks because I get my recipes from BBC anymore, then you've already begun to find that this idea, which you thought was great, is possibly not such a good one. We avoid classical product launches because we know we are doing a projection in an unknown market. We're not any wiser. We cannot predict behaviors of customers. But what we can do is start small, get something out there, see if they like it, even if it's expensive for us to deliver it, right? Right? Suppose you want to do a home delivery service, would you start with 75 vans? No, you start with 1 van, probably 3 supplying restaurants and 1 neighborhood. Yep. And you say, that's my target customer, stays in this neighborhood. I think they're going to buy. Start with 1 van, have an arrangement with 3 restaurants, put the brochures out there. Even if you're going physically delivering it yourself, the first thing you want to prove is, are customers willing to come and buy my product before making it efficient? A huge simplification for you guys, but think about it, right? When you go into the market starting with a product for the first time, there are only 2 hypotheses. Some of you are scientists out here. We have the whole concept of put a hypothesis and then you test whether it works or it doesn't work. There are only 2 hypotheses that you want to test. Do you want to take a guess what they might be? One question was here, is it providing value? Am I even getting customer number 1? The next thing is, how am I going to go into growth? How will they discover the products once the initial adopters and enthusiasts, friends, family, fools have tried the product and move on? Once they discover it and you've got people banging down your door, it's a nice problem to have. People will give you the money to scale. But people won't give you money to scale if there's no evidence that you've got a pent-up customer demand. So these are really the 2 fundamental things you want to prove with your market segmentation and innovation. And to your point, thank you for that. They're really to get spiraling innovation, i.e. get funding onto your product development, i.e. get more customers on. There are really 4 ways you can get customers coming in. Word of mouth. That's how WhatsApp has grown. I've never seen a WhatsApp advertisement, but I've always seen people on WhatsApp telling other people to join. Side effect, PayPal started as a payment engine for eBay, and then 1 in 6 payments, credit card payments, happen through PayPal. Funded advertising, you said about growing the market. That's when you're actually advertising to get more customers. And the last one is repeat purchases. The service you're providing is so good, people go back and do it. So it's the iTunes, the Kindle, that kind of business model, right? So ultimately it's sticky, viral, or paid, and the ones that you want is this and this. So which is why even if it is before profits, even before profits, the really important thing you've got to do is serve the customer really well, even if it's not automatic, even if it's more expensive for you. Once you establish there's a market and people are willing to pay, the way to grow is to get word of mouth, because for a startup, this becomes very, very costly. Yeah? So just to summarize, in the simplest terms, if I were to wrap everything up, the first part of the session was essentially around segmentation, and the critical thing out there is even the biggest companies have started with the smallest of markets, which they've dominated, they've been meaningful, and then they've been able to go and dominate adjacent markets. So nobody starts by a big market. You segment it to something that you can access, customers can walk through the door, and they're willing to talk to you. That's the huge important thing. The second thing we discussed is how to talk to customers, where we did the MOM test, the fail test, and it's not about what you and your app and your friends decided and will you pay so much. It's about talking about their lives, the problems, how they solve it today, and how they do it in their past, to give you an idea whether there's a prospect in the future. Talking to people and saying, will you buy a hypothetical product in the future, is meaningless. Because one person's opinion cannot give you a market response. Nobody is an expert. The only way you can do it, and that was the third thing we did, was to develop a minimum viable product. And that's where you don't go and burn all your cash. You solve the customer's problem, even if it's inefficient for you to do it, to prove the fact, firstly, there are customers walking through the door, they're willing to pay you value for it, and the last part is that you've got a proposition that has the potential to grow. Should all fail, when you get your first customer feedback, you have this as 8 things that you can do as your safety net to go and tweak and step back and say, let's pivot and do out here. So these are new terms in the entrepreneurial economy: pivoting, MVP. So as you see more stuff, go to YouTube and listen about it. At least you now have the concepts and background to do more research. So thank you very much, guys. Next session is on pitching, and the next slot is exactly a week from now, and I'm going to hand over to an incentive. We're going to talk about next steps. The next session is going to be on business case and financial planning. So how do you look at least creating a projection for a year or two for your particular business plan? Sure, things are going to change and the plans are not valid, just after you start the business, but planning as a process is hugely important, and we're going to take people through that exercise.